I have found that God has given me a grace for people that may not see the world the way I do, and to realize that that God is really above it all. You know, there's a fancy word we use in theological circles called He's sovereign. You know, meaning He's above it all, and He's got a plan. And I believe in the sovereign God, and I believe that God is working through all this.
Welcome back to another episode of the Daron Earlewine Podcast, here with my good friend Jeff Eckart. And Jeff is an alumni of the podcast and runs an organization called Never the Same. They do camps all over the country, and also Claim Your Campus, which is a nationwide prayer movement of schools all over this nation. And Jeff, you guys had an enormous event planned. You've been planning it for years. That was supposed to happen in Kansas City on July 4th weekend this year. And obviously, like every event around the U.S., it had to be put on pause or rescheduled and canceled because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But you have pivoted in the midst of crisis, in the midst of change. And I'm excited about what you're doing. I want to talk about it because I know that all of us have dreams. We have plans in our lives, and then life happens, things change. And I love how you've not allowed this setback to completely, set you guys off track, but you've pivoted, and now you are on a 600-mile trail and a walk of prayer. And I just want to talk about it. But welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, Dan, good to be with you, man.
So give us a little backstory, Jeff. You guys had this Claim Your Campus event in Kansas City. Give us just an overview of what was supposed to be happening this summer for you guys.
Yeah, July 4th weekend, we're going to hold a festival type event Friday, Saturday, Sunday for 100,000 middle and high schoolers and adults. And we're going to equip and inspire and unite them to really bring positive change to their school. And we're doing that really through living out their faith and prayer and showing the love of Christ. And we've been really pointed towards July 4th weekend steadily for about 3 years. This is a dream that I've been really feeling pulled towards for about 10 years. And so, when we chose the location in 2017 to be Kansas, this particular area south of Kansas City, it's really kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but it was a great spot to hold an event. It's right in the middle of the country. It's actually the most central location to every middle and high school in the country. So there's a lot of things about it. And then when COVID happened, everything just kind of flipped upside down, and we're still calling for a time of unified prayer. But what we've really sensed is that right now, what our nation needs more than anything is we need healing. And so we've really called for a time of simultaneous unified prayer on July 4th. And we're doing what we're calling a live stream on location. We're doing a live stream at noon Central on July 4th. We're asking people that really care about the heart and soul of the country and all that we're going through. And we're really calling on people that believe that God is the ultimate and only solution to the problems that we're facing. We're asking people with that heart and mindset to join us at a local middle and high school, whether you're an adult, a student, doesn't matter, at noon Central. And we're going to pray for healing, and that healing comes in two parts. We're praying for healing for the nation, and we're praying for healing for this generation. And when the location for our event, when we selected it to be Kansas back in 2017, something came back into the radar of my life, and that's this Potawatomi Trail of Death, which was a forced removal of Native Americans from Indiana to Kansas. Now, what caught my attention, I'd heard about it before, but what caught my attention in 2017 is that we had chosen this location in Kansas, and the Trail of Death ends right next to this field where we were going to meet. And also it begins where I used to live in northern Indiana for a period of time, and it's where my first daughter was born. So it starts in Plymouth, Indiana, and it ends in Osawatomie, Kansas. And so I found that geographic connection too coincidental. And so for the last 3 years, it felt like I needed to prayer walk this trail really to prepare the ground spiritually, so to speak, for this event, but I didn't have the time to do it. And then when COVID happened, it just opened the door. And
I lost you in that last sentence, Jeff. I think your remote location on this walk is hampering. But you said it basically it leads up to this, and this is something you've been seeing for. I mean, just kind of repeat that last sentence.
Yeah. So really, I've been wanting to prayer walk this for 3 years. COVID really, with the change and everything, it gave me the gift of time and margin. So that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm prayer walking as we speak towards Kansas.
Jeff, as you're explaining the geographical, significance of, where you were raised, how this trail of death and the story behind it has, captured your heart for years, and the fact that it ends in this place in Kansas, which I've been able to be a part of the Never the Same camps the past couple years and speak at some of the camps, and so I've heard this vision growing, and I know the choice. There's been so much just kind of crazy Holy Spirit God stuff around this location, and man, as you were just saying that, like I'm getting like Holy Spirit goosebumps about how like you can just see how God is still absolutely in this, which I love, but on just a totally leadership, like fleshly side of things, like how long did it take you to get over the disappointment or maybe even anger that this all had to shift planning wise?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Daron. As a good friend, I've shared this vision with you going back a couple of years, and it really was it's been one of the biggest disappointments in my life. There's no question about it. I know a lot of people have lost things during COVID. Some people have lost loved ones or friends, family members. People have lost their jobs. They've lost their retirement. And so, my story for COVID was really losing this dream that I had been really giving my entire life to for the last 3 years. And I don't want to make light of anyone else's losses, but for me personally, it was very difficult because I felt so certain that God was really pointing towards Kansas. And I'll tell you, Daron, that right now, I mean, there was a weekend where we decided my wife and I just decided, there's just no practical way. Up until mid-April, I was still holding out hope that things would change. And we finally had to just allow the dream to die, so to speak. And it was a few days in between. It was like really losing a friend. It was difficult, but coming out of that, a few days later, someone from Kansas, actually, a friend of ours, said, why don't you have people gather at schools and pray? And we realized it wasn't our plan A, but we really do believe that it was in the heart of God for this to happen. And, Daron, it's interesting, like there were over 20 faith-based events that were stadium size happening throughout the United States between April and October of this year in 2020. And we were one of those. And most of those have shifted to next year, but we felt like this was the moment that we were meant for. I'm concerned that, because as you know, Daron, this was more than an event to us. This wasn't like, oh, let's plan an event. This was really a God-given dream.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we didn't want to do was like, well, let's just shift the event to 2021 and miss the moment that we're in right now as a nation. I'm standing right now in this park in Liberty, Illinois, and I'm looking right now as I'm talking to you at this little kids park playground, and it's all taped off with caution tape. Like we're going through this, COVID situation. We're going through a financial crisis and a racial crisis, 3 crises, and that's never happened in the history of our nation. And right now is the time for believers to really step forward in courage and faith and prayer and humility and begin to seek the face of God for ourselves and for our country.
So well put, Jeff. And what's so meaningful to me is just, being, you being a mentor in my life and a friend for so many years, I know that this, I mean, you bleed this. This is what you have been about for so long. And man, there's just a weightiness to what you're saying. And I totally agree with it. And it just seems to be, there's so much about the kingdom, right? So much about what Jesus taught that, was upside down. Hey, you've heard it said, but now I say, and this is how everybody usually thinks the world works. But, his kingdom's a little bit upside down. And it's just, something feels so right about where, kind of God being like, hey, I know that you're saying there's all these stadium events, there's all this big stuff, but like, this is going to be grassroots. This is going to be people in just, no blitz, no flash and pomp and circumstance behind it. But this is going to be tens or hundreds of thousands of people just humbly praying and seeking God's face. And there's no doubt it's necessary. It's always necessary, but it's so interesting to me the way it's playing out in this time and in this space.
Yeah, someone mentioned to me that maybe Claim Your Campus will be like similar to how the birth of Christ in the world came about. You would think, if we were to plan the birth of the Savior and God welcoming him into our world, we would have a big event. We would have some significant moment. And all these events, and I'm the same, we get caught up in the hype and all that. And what a big event, how exciting it is. But that birth of Christ, how he came into the world in such a small, hidden and humble way, maybe this vision that we've had and the reason we're doing the event, is ultimately to fulfill this vision of student-led prayer at every middle and high school in America. So perhaps this grassroots, like you're talking about, Daron, this just really basic stripped down moment could be the catalyst to achieve that vision of prayer at every school, because there is a school in every community in the country. And if there's a new generation of students praying and seeking God, that can touch every community in the nation. We need it.
Absolutely. Jeff, we're gonna rush this interview, and get it out so we can try to motivate as many people alongside to join together on July 4th to go to their campus, their high school, their middle school, and to pray. And that'd be 11 a.m. Eastern time, 12 o'clock. 1 p.m.
Eastern.
Yeah, we're the other way around, aren't we?
Other way around.
So it'll be 1 o'clock. Jeff, just a second. I got somebody running a vacuum in my house. Yeah, just like 10 minutes. Okay, thanks. So this is embarrassing, but this is the one morning in the month that the cleaning people come to our house, and they're of Hispanic Latin descent, and I tried to go out and say, "Could you just wait for 10 minutes so I can finish this call?" And she said, "Okay, 10 minutes," and then she turned the vacuum back on. No bueno. Well, let me wait. Like she's literally outside my office door. We'll wait till she goes to a different room here. But we'll just edit this out.
That's funny, dude.
What I don't know is how sensitive this microphone is. But all right, we'll get. Yeah, I'm going to ask you that question again real quick. Here we go.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So, Jeff, we want to rush this episode out because I wanted to make sure that we can motivate as many people as we can in Indiana and then across our listening audience to be a part of this event. And it would be 1 p.m. Eastern time is what it would be for us in Indiana, July 4th, to just go pray on the campus of your high school or your middle school or really any school. Just go pray. But Jeff, give us some instruction. What is there? Are there maybe 2 or 3 main things that you want us to agree together and pray for? Yeah,
really. I mean, we're keeping it so simple. This is a prayer for healing, and in that moment, this live stream on location, what we're going to do is when people tune into that live stream, they're going to go to their school. It'll be noon Central, which would be 1 p.m. Eastern. But people from all over the country and all time zones will be participating. And this could be, parents, grandparents, teachers, coaches, pastors, anyone, as well as students. And on that live stream, we're going to, instruct everyone how to pray. So if you're listening and you're maybe feeling intimidated, like I'm going to show up and just have to like go through this and figure this out, we're going to guide you through it. But we're asking, and we're going to guide students to be praying for the healing of the nation. Right now, there's no program, there's no politician, there's no pill that really can solve these issues. And I believe that the voice that's the most unifying right now is the voice of a child, the voice of a student, especially in prayer. So we're calling upon our students during this live stream. We're going to be guiding them on how to pray for the healing of the nation. And then we're going to be inviting adults to be praying for the healing of this generation of Gen Z of students. They're the most anxious, depressed, and even suicidal generation in American history. And we need the hand of God to really touch them and to rewrite the history into where we're headed and take us in a different direction. So it's pretty simple. You listening, here's what you need to do. You need to do one thing right now, and that is go to cyc2020.com. So that stands for Claim Your Campus. So this moment's called Claim Your Campus 2020. But if you go to cyc2020.com, you go to that website, and there'll be a little pop-up that says, I'm in, I want more information, and just put your name and email in there. And then we're going to follow up with instructions on what to do. And it's pretty simple. You show up, we're saying you stand up, show up, and pray up. So standing up is putting your name in there. Showing up is being at your school, and then praying up is what we're going to do when we're together. And so if you put your name and email in cyc2020.com, then we'll be able to follow up with anyone listening and help them be a part of this historic moment of prayer on July 4th.
I love it, Jeff. I can tell you I'll be there with my family praying here in Indiana, and I feel honored to be a part of it. I think it was the first summer you guys started promoting this. I was glad to be, I think, one of the first, guys to contribute and to get on board. And I've been praying for it and excited about it and wearing my T-shirt here in Indiana. And I'm just humbled to be able to be a part of what you're doing, Jeff, and to be a part of what God is doing. And it just means the world to me. And it's so cool to hear just and I'm so glad that you were vulnerable and honest enough to say, hey, this was kind of like losing a friend when this event went away. There was a death. And we talk about it a lot. I talk about it in the spiritual DNA course that we all experience multiple deaths of dreams in our lives. And so often, when a dream becomes a part of our identity and it dies, a lot of times we get stuck and we move back from progressing where God's taking us because we're so either we've started to distrust God, or we're so sad or depressed that we move back kind of from the front lines of following Him. And I love the example that you are setting, and what we can learn from saying that even when the plan in the dream as it's filled our mind, as it's filled our heart, dies, is God is not done. I mean, he's obviously in the resurrection business as far as what He did through Jesus, and so He's always resurrecting dreams, and they may not look the same or be the exact way we thought they would work. But I think it's awesome to see that he's still showing up in powerful ways, and how He's going to resurrect this and what He's going to do. I'm honored to be able to be a part of it, brother.
Daron, you were one of the very first people, 2 years ago to literally, put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, to get behind this event. And that really meant a lot as a friend, knowing that you believe in it. And, this situation, I've had a lot of encouragement and counsel from friends and mentors that have helped me walk through the disappointment. And I've realized on this prayer walk, many days I'm out there on the road all by myself, and really realizing that the presence of God is so real, but He also gave us one another as an encouragement. And your encouragement today means so much. And And, I'm just thinking of anyone else that maybe has gone through a disappointment. I can't help but think when you mentioned that, Daron, of the disciples, when they'd been following this man that they thought, Jesus, that they thought was going to lead them to great victory. And then they saw him die, and they experienced that extreme disappointment and I'm sure disillusionment. But what was on the other side of that, changed their lives forever. And I believe that that's the case for me. And I'm still waiting. I don't know what God's going to do here, but I'm believing. And because I know I can trust God. And anyone that might be experiencing that disappointment, just hang in there, because there is something on the other side. And I speak as someone saying that right now that doesn't know what that other side is for me yet, but I know my God well enough in my own life and the truth of Scripture to know that he's not going to just leave me hanging out there, that there's a plan here. So I'm grateful for you, Daron. I appreciate your influence and all that you do to shape and help people in their lives. And I follow what you do, and I'm grateful to be with you today.
Well, it means the world, brother. And I want to let you get on the walk, but I want to ask you one last question about the trail of death that you're on, and say it right, so I don't completely screw up the name of the Indian tribe. What was it?
Yeah, the Potawatomi Indians.
So Potawatomi. So give us, I don't think we have yet, give us just the quick historical context of this. And then what I'd like to hear is, you're talking about the Spirit of God and presence of God being so real, as you've already walked, 100 miles of the trail, and you've had people that have walked with you. And I've been following you on Instagram and seeing the updates, but give us a quick historical background for it. And then what are some of the takeaways you've already gotten in the first 100 miles?
So September 4th of 1838, the Potawatomi Indians were forcibly removed at gunpoint from northern Indiana, and they arrived in what is now Osawatomie, Kansas, on November 4th of 1838. It was during a great season of drought. It was also during a time of one of the typhoid fever outbreaks. So there's some interesting parallels with what's happening today. And, it was this forced removal because, the settlers wanted to progress in the area of Indiana and in the Midwest of the United States. And this was one of several of these that happened, of these forced removals. And so I've really felt a connection to Prayer Walk This, and God's really been showing me, that sometimes history, it takes a long time to really reveal truth. And for a large amount of people to see it. We're going through a lot right now. And, I've realized that God has been speaking to me and just given me grace. I purposely have jumped out of the news cycle during this walk. And I've realized doing that the news cycle guides so much of how I think about the world. And along with social media, it creates a lot of stress and anxiety. And so jumping out of that has been powerful. I post things on social media to give people updates. And if you're interested in that, it's Jeff Eckart on Instagram. But I have found that God has given me a grace for people that may not see the world the way I do, and to realize that that God is really above it all. There's a fancy word we use in theological circles called He's sovereign. Meaning he's above it all, and he's got a plan. And I believe in the sovereign God, and I believe that God is working through all this. And I also believe that this prayer for healing that's dominated my thinking, I believe that healing comes at a cost. That healing is not, most of the time, especially for deep needs and wounds that exist, healing is a painful experience. And I'm hoping and wondering on this trip, are we at the beginning, or are we in the middle of the healing process, especially racially right now? When you experience healing, if you break an arm, when you go into the doctors, you have to have that arm reset. And that is a painful, awful thing to go through, but you have to do it or it doesn't heal right. And I think the wounds of, things that happen with the Native Americans, and then, with slavery, I don't think we've really dealt with those things. And so those wounds are being passed on from generation to generation. That's why we're still dealing with it. And this is our chance. This is our opportunity, our moment to really deal with it. And now we all have our ideas on how to deal with it. What I think is interesting is that racially, I don't think I've ever since in my lifetime more, especially Caucasian folks, feeling more unified about the existence of racism in America.
Yes.
And yet what we're divided on is what we do about it. And that's what's dividing us. And I think, in terms of this recognition, we actually have made progress because there's recognition. But what do we do? Now that's where we're at right now. But if we as believers, speaking to believers here, followers of Jesus, if we want to follow him, we need to accept his healing on his terms and not ours. It's not our solution. It's his solution. We have to accept it, which means it's not going to be, our own expectations of what we think should happen. But we have to be humble enough to allow God to bring the healing that he wants on his terms and his timing.
Wow. If you're listening, we are listening, you'd probably need to go back and rewind and listen to what Jeff just said, because there's such power and truth in what you just said, Jeff. And, it makes me think about the Beatitudes. This jumped off the page to me in early June here. I was preparing for a sermon, and you read through the Beatitudes, and Jesus is saying, blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who seek after, righteousness and justice. Blessed are the peacemakers. So it's like, and you look at that and you say, I don't feel blessed when I'm mourning. I don't feel blessed like if I'm having to seek after justice, because that means I'm dealing with injustice. Like all these things that we think, well, we're going to pray and ask God to bless us. That means there's going to be, unicorns and rainbows and cotton candy. Like that's what it means. And it seems like Jesus is, his perspective, like you're saying, that process of healing and what needs to happen a lot of times is that it's in this pain and this confusion and this mourning and this struggle and tension against, good and evil and justice and injustice. And is that's where the healing comes. That's where the blessing comes. That's where the presence of God comes. But we have to be able to become comfortable being uncomfortable. We have to be able to embrace the tension and let him give us, like you said, that extra portion of grace that we need. And that I think that's a lesson. That's a lesson we usually resist learning, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. It is. And it's hard. We have, just like, talking earlier about my expectations for this event that we wanted to hold. And I just had the death grip on that thing. I would not let go of this idea and my own expectations. But when we're willing to let go of our expectations, and honestly, I really believe that we have to get our eyes off of the media. More and more, I feel like the media, intentionally or unintentionally, is poisoning our perspective and our minds. And I just feel like we're so media and news cycle driven that, and that's one of the things I'm really debating on this prayer walk, is how much of the media do I really need to be listening to? I know people say, well, you need to know what's going on in the world. But what we're seeing, is that really reality? And how much of reality is social media? I know those discussions are happening, but I can just say that I felt a cleansing. And I've done this before in my life where I've just backed off of, different, just burying my head in the news cycle. But I really think that our perspective is so different and so much more peaceful when our hearts and minds are locked into the Spirit of God, and we're continually praying throughout our days and asking God this significant question: God, what are you up to? What are you doing? Because I think, when COVID happened, someone shared that with me at the beginning. They said the most important question that we all need to be asking is, God, what are you up to? Because my first response naturally was, what do I do? How do I survive? How do I adapt? And those are questions that need answering. But I think first and foremost, during these days especially, but just in general, we just need to say, God, what are you up to here? What are you doing? And seek his face about it.
So good. God, what are you up to? I love it, Jeff. Dude, Jeff, I'll be praying for you every day on this journey. I'll join you in prayer on July 4th. And from the bottom of my heart, man, I love you. I respect you so much. It's an honor to follow in your footsteps and to be led by you in so many different ways. And so it's great stuff. Go to CYC 2020. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yep, CYC2020.com. Yep, .com.
So go there, sign up, stand up, show up, pray up on July 4th, Independence Day, prayer for healing for our nation. Get a group, students, parents, and let's join together. And if you want to continue to follow what's going on with Jeff, NTS Camps, is that right? Is that the website for NTS?
Yeah. NTS Camps are our camps for the summer. Our organization is neverthesame.org.
So we'll put all this obviously in the podcast link. You guys can follow it, and we'll put Jeff's social media handles too, so you can follow the prayer walk. But once again, Jeff, thanks for taking the time. I'll let you get on the hike today. Excited to see what you post today and what you're learning. But I love you, man. Praying for you, and thanks for taking the time with me.
Yeah, I love you too, bro. Appreciate what you're doing, Daron. Thank you again.